always thought my friends had each other's backs, until I realized one of us had a knife. It was 6 of us, inseparable since freshman year of college. Then Roxy went missing on a Sunday night. She left for boba around 8 p.m., and we haven't heard from her since. 3 days later, city police opened a missing person case. It made no sense. Literally, the night before, we were dying laughing at her terrible karaoke, planning our spring break trip to the beach in the group chat. She was our spark, the one who'd FaceTime you from outside your dorm until you let her in because we're getting food and you're coming. Without her, we all retreated to our rooms, and the group chat became just shared TikToks with no replies. After a couple weeks went by, our group tried to reconnect, but Connor wouldn't talk about that night. He was the last person with her. They'd gone for boba together around 8 p.m., but anytime someone brought it up, he'd shut down. I already told the cops everything, he'd say, then change the subject or leave the room. It never sat right with me. Then Connor started ghosting us completely. His Instagram told a different story though. Parties every night, beer pong championships, spring break trips like nothing happened. He'd take days to reply to our messages or just leave us on red. The group assumed Connor was just hurt the most. On that karaoke night, he'd confessed his love to Roxy for like the 10th time, right there in front of everyone. She gave him the same gentle rejection as always. You know I love you, just not like that. He laughed it off and ordered another round, but we all knew how much he actually loved her. Connor kept ghosting us, but there was one thing that would make him respond instantly. The thought of searching for Roxy. We'd plan search parties in the group chat, and suddenly he'd break his silence. You're wasting your time. She probably doesn't want to be found. We'd share missing person flyers, and within seconds, this is obsessive. Just let her go. When her parents came to campus, he was conveniently too sick to meet them. Weeks later, I bumped into Connor at a party. He was wasted, stumbling around. When he spotted me, he grabbed my shoulder and pulled me close, his breath reeking of vodka. You know what's funny? He slurred. Everyone thinks she's so perfect, but perfect people don't just disappear. Maybe she finally went somewhere she actually wanted to be. The way he said it, like he knew exactly where Roxy was. This was the last straw. I had to tell the others. The group thought I was paranoid. He's depressed, Nicole said. People say weird things when they're grieving. Richard agreed, saying he loved her. He's probably just hammered and spiraling. But then Nicole said we couldn't just leave him alone like this. Even if Connor was pushing everyone away, we needed to make sure he was okay. That's what real friends do. They show up, especially when someone's hurting. That Saturday afternoon, we drove to his house unannounced. When Connor cracked the door open, Richard pushed past him. Connor looked panicked. We said we were worried about him, just wanted to make sure he was okay. He kept insisting we needed to leave, saying he was exhausted, hadn't been sleeping, just needed to lie down. That's when we heard a thud from below the ground. Connor went white. He blamed it on his neighbor moving furniture and said the walls were thin, but Connor lived on the ground floor. The only thing below him was the basement. He was getting more desperate, practically shoving us toward the door. That's when I noticed 2 sets of dishes in his sink, 2 glasses on the counter, 2 jackets on the hook. Connor lived completely alone. We left Connor's house, but something felt deeply wrong. The group huddled outside, and I kept bringing up the dishes, the basement noise, his panic. Guys, there's clearly something wrong here, I insisted, but everyone seemed relieved we'd finally checked on him. See, he's alive, just grieving, Nicole said, almost cheerful. The poor guy probably has a hookup over. Richard patted my shoulder like I'd been proven wrong. Connor's always been weird about his space. At least we tried. Even the thud from the basement became a joke. Old buildings make noise, Jade laughed. Connor's clearly grieving. We did our part as friends. They were all so satisfied we'd been good friends. Checked the box, case closed. But I couldn't shake that thud we'd heard. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Roxy, about Connor's behavior, about those 2 glasses. At 3 a.m., I made a decision. I drove back to Connor's house and parked across the street just watching. His lights were still on. Through the window, I could see him pacing back and forth on his phone. Then he disappeared from view. A few minutes later, I saw him carrying grocery bags inside, 2 bags from CVS. Why would someone need pharmacy runs at 3 a.m.? I stayed until sunrise. Around 6 a.m., Connor emerged with a garbage bag. He walked it all the way to the dumpster behind the building. Looking over his shoulder the whole time, he dumped it and springed back to his house. I knew I shouldn't, but I walked over and looked inside. My stomach dropped. On top were the CVS receipts, bandages, antiseptic, women's vitamins, Plan B. But underneath, soaked in what looked like dried blood, was Roxy's purple NYU hoodie, the same one she wore that night. The sleeves were torn, like they'd been used to tie something or someone. My hands were shaking as I took photos of everything. Then I heard Connor's door open above me. I froze. Connor's footsteps echoed down the metal stairs, getting closer. My heart pounded as I quickly snapped one more photo of the bloody hoodie. The dumpster lid slammed shut louder than I intended. Looking for bottles to recycle? Connor's voice made me jump. He stood at the bottom of the stairs, hands casually in his pockets, but his eyes were cold. He knew exactly why I was here. I forced a laugh, shoving my phone in my pocket. Actually, I dropped my wallet last night. Thought maybe it fell out when I was walking to my car. The lie came out shaky. Connor stepped between me and my car, blocking the path. At 6 a.m., that's dedication. His tone was light, but his body language screamed threat. Why are you really here? My phone buzzed. I glanced down to see Nicole's text. Where are you? Connor just called Richard saying you're stalking him. My stomach dropped. He'd already called them before even confronting me. Look, I should go, I said, trying to step around him. Connor moved with me, maintaining the block. Let me help you look for that wallet. He reached for my elbow, his grip too tight. That's when I noticed the fresh scratches on his hands, red and angry against his pale skin. I yanked my arm away and bolted toward my car. But as I rounded the corner, my heart sank. Richard's Honda was pulling into the lot. Richard got out, his face full of concern. But the concern wasn't for Roxy or about Connor. It was directed at me. Hey, are you okay? Connor called and said you've been following him around. We're worried about you. I'm fine, I said, fumbling for my keys. Connor had caught up, playing the victim perfectly. I've been trying to process everything, and then I wake up to find someone going through my trash. I've been getting hang-up calls all night too. He rubbed his temples like he had a headache. I know we're all dealing with Roxy being gone, but this isn't healthy. Richard nodded along. You have been acting pretty paranoid lately. Maybe we should all go get some breakfast, talk this through. I wanted to scream about the hoodie, the blood, the receipts, but I realized how it would sound. A college student buying bandages and going through someone's trash at dawn. My phone held the only proof, and even those photos just showed me at Connor's building. I don't need breakfast. I need you to listen to me, I started, but another car pulled up. Nicole's white Toyota, with Jade in the passenger seat. They got out quickly, Nicole already talking. Connor texted our whole group chat, said you've been stalking him since 3 a.m. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and disappointment. This has to stop. I was surrounded now, 4 against 1 in an empty parking lot at dawn. Connor had orchestrated this perfectly. Jade spoke up, her voice gentle but firm. I got a text from Roxy's phone at 4 a.m. It said, "Stop looking for me." Maybe we need to respect that. My mind raced. I'd been watching Connor's window at 4 a.m. He couldn't have sent that text. Unless, can I see the text? I asked. Jade showed me her phone. The message was there, from Roxy's number. But something felt off about the wording. Too formal for how Roxy texted. Connor seized the moment. You know what? Let me show you all something. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through old messages. Remember freshman year? After that party where Roxy won beer pong? He turned the screen toward the group. There they were. Hammered texts I'd sent 3 years ago, confessing I was jealous of how everyone loved Roxy instantly, how she made friends so easily. I'd forgotten those messages existed, but Connor had saved them. "I'm not saying you did anything," Connor said, his voice dripping with fake concern. "But maybe this obsession with me is really about something else." Nicole reached for my phone. "Let me see what you've been doing tonight. If you have nothing to hide." I clutched it tighter, but Jade grabbed my other arm. "We're trying to help you." In the struggle, Nicole got my phone. She scrolled through my photos, her face growing more troubled. "You've been taking pictures of Connor's apartment all night and his trash? This is seriously disturbing." "Look at what's in the trash," I pleaded. Connor shook his head sadly. "I threw out some old clothes earlier. Are you going to claim I planted evidence now?" He looked at the others. "I've actually been documenting this harassment with campus security since Monday. I didn't want to make a big deal, but you've been filing reports?" Richard asked. Connor nodded. "I have screenshots of her outside my window at 3 a.m. I didn't want to involve you guys, but when she started going through my garbage, I had to call you." I lunged for my phone, desperate to show them the bloody hoodie photo, but I tripped over the curb, my phone flying from Nicole's hand. It hit the concrete screen first with a sickening crack. I scrambled to pick it up. The screen was shattered, the photos corrupted into colorful static. "This is really concerning behavior," Nicole said. "Maybe you should talk to someone professional. The counseling center, ... "I'm not crazy," I shouted, immediately regretting how crazy that sounded. That's when campus security pulled up. 2 officers got out, and the older one looked directly at me. "Morning, Sarah. We've had some complaints." He knew my name. Connor's reports had been thorough. Connor stepped forward, the perfect concerned friend. "Officers, I don't want to press charges or anything. We're all just worried about her. She's been fixated on me since our friend disappeared." The younger officer looked at his notepad. "Mr. Morrison showed us screenshots of you outside his residence at 3:17 a.m., 4:42 a.m., and 5:56 a.m. because I saw him acting suspicious," I protested. Richard shook his head. "Sarah, you've been following Connor around all night. That's not normal. We're all grieving Roxy, but this isn't the way." "There's a bloody hoodie in that dumpster," I said desperately. "Roxy's purple NYU hoodie. Just look." The officers exchanged glances. The older one sighed. "We'll check, but you need to understand that this behavior constitutes stalking. Mr. Morrison would be within his rights to file a restraining order." Connor put his hand up. "That won't be necessary. She's just going through a hard time." We all waited while one officer checked the dumpster. He came back shaking his head. Nothing but regular garbage bags. No clothing items. My heart sank. While Connor had been distracting me, someone had removed the evidence. "This needs to stop," the officer said firmly. "Ms. Chen, you need to leave Mr. Morrison alone. No more following, no more calls, no more going through his trash. Consider this your official warning. Next time, we'll have to take formal action." Nicole put her arm around me. "Come on, let's get you home. We'll figure this out, but you need to stop this." I looked at each of their faces. Richard's disappointment, Jade's pity, Nicole's concern, and Connor's carefully crafted worry with just a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. They guided me to Nicole's car, treating me like a fragile thing that might break. As we drove away, I saw Connor in the rearview mirror, already on his phone, planning his next move. The group chat was quiet the rest of the morning, but that evening, Connor's Instagram story appeared. He was at Roxy's favorite restaurant with Nicole, 2 plates of pad thai on the table. The caption read, "Supporting each other through grief." He'd ordered Roxy's exact meal, the same spice level, the same additions. I knew because I'd watched her order it 100 times. My phone, barely functional with its cracked screen, buzzed with unknown numbers. The messages were all the same. Photos of me at Connor's building, tagged with "unstable stalker" and "leave him alone." I checked my own Instagram. Someone had posted the security footage of me at the dumpster. The caption, "$, justice for Connor, when grief becomes obsession." It already had dozens of comments, all condemning me. My roommate knocked on my door that evening. "Hey, so," Connor called me. "He's worried you might be dangerous, and I have finals coming up." She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Maybe you could stay somewhere else for a few days?" Connor had known exactly who to call. My roommate was pre-med, couldn't afford any distractions during finals week. I packed a bag, my mind reeling. In one morning, Connor had turned me from concerned friend to unstable stalker. Every move I'd made to expose him had been twisted into evidence against me. But the worst part was realizing this had all been planned. Those reports filed before I'd even suspected him. The group assembled before I could explain. The evidence removed while he distracted me. Connor hadn't just covered up what happened to Roxy. He'd prepared for someone like me, someone who wouldn't let it go. And now I was the one who looked guilty. I discovered Connor had recorded our entire group visit to his house. The video appeared on his Instagram story that night, carefully edited to make me look aggressive while he seemed calm and reasonable. Every time I'd raised my voice about the basement noise, every moment I'd pointed at the dishes, captured and cropped to paint me as unhinged, the comments flooded in from our mutual friends, all expressing concern about my behavior and support for Connor. My academic advisor called the next morning. Connor had contacted the administration about feeling unsafe on campus. She suggested I take some time off to focus on my mental health. When I tried to explain the situation, she cut me off with practice sympathy, mentioning the counseling center's excellent grief support programs. The subtext was clear: cooperate or face academic consequences. I went to campus police with my story, but they already had Connor's report on file. The officer showed me the folder, thick with documentation, screenshots, timestamps, witness statements from our friends. Connor had been building this case for days, maybe weeks. Every interaction we'd had since Roxy disappeared had been carefully documented from his perspective. The officer suggested I focus on my studies and leave the investigation to professionals. The storage unit receipt haunted me. I'd seen it clearly in the dumpster photos before my phone broke. You store it on Maple Street, Unit 47, rented the day after Roxy vanished. But without the photo, it was just my word against Connor's growing pile of evidence that I was unstable. I spent the next 3 days in my car, too ashamed to go home, too stubborn to give up. I parked near Connor's usual spots, watching, waiting for him to slip up. But he knew I was there. He'd wave sometimes, that same concerned expression on his face, like he pitied me. Other students started recognizing my car, pointing and whispering. On the fourth night, I followed Connor to a pharmacy. Inside, I watched him browse the first aid aisle, filling his basket with bandages, antiseptic, gauze. My hands shook as I approached the pharmacist after Connor left, loudly asking about what someone might need those supplies for, mentioning hiding scratch marks. Other customers stared. The pharmacist asked me to leave. Security footage from that incident ended up online within hours. The caption read, "Stalker harasses pharmacy staff about innocent customer." The video showed me gesturing wildly while Connor calmly made his purchase in the background. Comments poured in about how I needed help, how Connor was being so patient with someone who was clearly disturbed. Jade texted me that night. She'd been talking to Connor, and he'd shared his theory that I'd been secretly in love with Roxy too, that my jealousy over their friendship was manifesting as these paranoid delusions. She wanted to meet, to talk about getting me help. I agreed, desperate for someone to believe me. We met at a coffee shop near campus. I tried to stay calm, laying out everything logically. The basement noise, the 2 sets of dishes, the bloody hoodie, the storage unit receipt. But I could see her face changing as I spoke, concern replacing confusion. She kept checking her phone, and I realized too late she was recording our conversation. That recording surfaced on the campus gossip page the next day. Out of context, I sounded completely unhinged, ranting about blood and storage units while Jade's voice remained steady and concerned. The post had hundreds of shares within hours. My reputation was destroyed. Connor announced he was moving his grief counseling appointment earlier and invited the whole friend group for a support session. Everyone except me. Nicole posted about it afterward, praising Connor's strength and vulnerability. The therapist had apparently helped them all process their grief and the added stress of dealing with a friend's mental health crisis. They meant me. Nicole texted me privately that night. She couldn't afford to be associated with my conspiracy theories. Her RA position paid for most of her tuition, and the administration was already asking questions about her friendship with the unstable girl harassing a grieving student. She wished me well, but said she needed to focus on her future. Just like that, my best friend since freshman year cut me off. I realized then how completely alone I was. Connor had systematically isolated me from everyone who knew Roxy. The group chat removed me that same night. The notification popped up on my cracked screen. Richard removed you from Beach Trip 2024. Our spring break plans, made with Roxy just weeks ago, continuing without either of us. Desperation drove me to break into Connor's car while he was in class. I found nothing but a parking receipt from U-Store. It dated 3 days after Roxy disappeared. My fingerprints were now all over his vehicle, but I had a lead. I drove to the storage facility, my heart racing with the possibility of finally finding evidence. The receipt led nowhere. The unit number was smudged, and the facility had dozens of buildings. Without proper documentation, they wouldn't tell me anything about renters. I sat in their parking lot for hours, watching people come and go, hoping to spot Connor. He never showed. Connor texted me that night, a simple message: "Stop this, or I'll tell everyone about Providence." My blood ran cold. The juvenile record I thought was sealed, a stupid shoplifting charge from high school that nearly cost me my college acceptance. Somehow, he knew. I didn't stop. The next morning, my part-time job at the campus bookstore called. They were suspending me pending an investigation into concerning behavior reported by a customer. Connor had been thorough, poisoning every aspect of my life. The anonymous blog post seemed like my only option. I created "Is NYU hiding a killer?" and posted it to the local community Facebook page. I laid out everything: the timeline of Roxy's disappearance, Connor's suspicious behavior, the way he'd systematically destroyed anyone who questioned him. Within an hour, the comments turned against me. People found my real identity, linked it to the stalking videos, the pharmacy incident, the campus security reports. I became the story, not Connor. Roxy's parents called me after seeing the blog post. Connor had been visiting them regularly, becoming their primary source of comfort. He'd told them about my harassment, my declining mental state. Roxy's mother sounded sedated, broken, asking me to please stop making their loss harder. Connor had turned even Roxy's parents against me. I discovered Connor had been visiting them daily, bringing groceries, helping with arrangements, becoming the son they'd never had. He'd shown them my blog post as evidence of how Roxy's disappearance was affecting her friends, how some people dealt with grief in unhealthy ways. They believed him completely. The truth hit me during one of those sleepless nights in my car. Connor wasn't just trying to get away with murder. When Roxy's parents mentioned having her declared legally dead to find closure, they'd named Connor as the executor of her estate. I remembered Roxy mentioning once, sophomore year, that she'd updated her emergency contacts and beneficiary information after her grandmother passed. Connor had been her closest friend then, before his feelings complicated everything. My academic advisor called again, this time with an ultimatum: take a leave of absence for my mental health or face a disciplinary hearing for harassment. The choice was mine, but the outcome would be the same: my education derailed. I chose the leave. At least that looked voluntary on paper. I started creating fake social media accounts to monitor Connor's activities. He was living his normal life, attending classes, going to parties, posting inspirational quotes about grief and healing. Nicole appeared in more of his photos, their body language growing closer. They wore matching purple bracelets now, in memory of Roxy. The storage unit consumed my thoughts. I managed to get Connor's credit card statements through a questionable website, finding regular charges to U-Store it. But when I went to investigate, the unit had been cleared out. The manager said the renter had ended their lease just that morning. Connor was always one step ahead. Richard finally responded to my texts, but only with an ultimatum: get help for my obsession or lose his friendship forever. He gave me 24 hours to decide. I spent them sitting in my car outside the counseling center, knowing that admitting I needed help meant admitting Connor had won. When the deadline passed, Richard blocked me on everything. My last ally, gone. I decided to use Connor's own tactics against him. I publicly apologized on social media, admitting I'd been struggling with grief and taking it out on an innocent person. I checked myself into campus counseling, telling them what they wanted to hear about my jealousy, my inability to process loss, my fixation on finding someone to blame. Playing broken destroyed something inside me. Sitting in those counseling sessions, repeating the lies about my mental state, I started to wonder if maybe everyone was right. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe the blood on the hoodie was just a stain. Maybe the basement noise was really the neighbors. Maybe Connor was just a grieving friend, and I was a jealous girl who couldn't accept that Roxy was gone. Connor magnanimously forgave me after my public apology. He reached out through Nicole, suggesting we all heal together. The group welcomed me back with careful warmth, like I was a recovering addict who might relapse at any moment. At the welcome back dinner, Connor hugged me, his arms wrapping around me just a little too long, his breath warm against my ear as he whispered about moving forward. During dinner, Connor mentioned his plans after graduation. He was moving to Seattle, Roxy's dream city. She'd talked about it constantly. The coffee shops, the rain, the music scene. Now Connor would live her dream, funded by her money. The irony made me sick, but I smiled and nodded like everyone else. The counseling sessions became a weapon against me. When Connor requested my therapy notes for closure, claiming it would help him understand and forgive my behavior, the counselor supported his request. Those sessions where I'd lied about being delusional, about imagining evidence, about projecting my grief onto an innocent person, all became part of Connor's narrative. Nicole started warning others that my recovery might be fake. Even my surrender was suspicious now. She'd catch me looking at Connor during group hangouts and whisper to others. The fragile acceptance I'd gained by admitting I was wrong evaporated. I was still the unstable one, just better at hiding it. When Roxy's memorial service was announced, I thought I'd finally have a chance to say goodbye. But the restraining order Connor had filed during my stalking phase was still active. I couldn't attend any event where he'd be present, and of course he was organizing the entire memorial. I was legally banned from saying goodbye to my friend. I convinced Jade to help me one last time. If she could get Connor to talk about that night, maybe record him saying something incriminating, we'd have evidence. She agreed reluctantly, more out of pity than belief. I helped her tape the wire under her shirt, watching her hands shake with nervousness. The plan failed immediately. Jade was too nervous, sweating through her shirt despite the cool weather. The tape became visible when she reached for her drink. Connor noticed but didn't confront her directly. Instead, he looked hurt, asking why she didn't trust him after everything they'd been through together. Jade broke down and confessed everything. She showed Connor our text messages planning the recording, apologizing through tears. He comforted her, the perfect picture of understanding, while she betrayed every detail of our plan. By that evening, everyone knew I was still conspiring against Connor, despite my supposed recovery. I found Connor's real storage unit by tracking his credit card statements to a different U-Store location across town. The unit was small, climate-controlled, paid 3 months in advance. I waited until 2 a.m., then used bolt cutters on the lock. Inside, I found cleaning supplies, bleach bottles, rubber gloves, and a rolled-up carpet with dark stains. My hands trembled as I took photos with a disposable camera I'd bought specifically to avoid digital traces. The next morning, I drove straight to the police station with the developed photos. The desk sergeant barely glanced at them before informing me that breaking into someone's storage unit was a felony. Connor had already reported the break-in. Security cameras had captured everything. I was arrested on the spot. My court-appointed lawyer explained my options while I sat in a holding cell. The prosecutor offered a plea deal. Plead guilty to stalking and breaking and entering, get probation and mandatory counseling, or go to trial where Connor would testify about months of harassment. The storage unit photos were inadmissible as evidence since I'd obtained them illegally. Even if they weren't, cleaning supplies and a stained carpet proved nothing. I took the deal. The judge's gavel felt like a nail in Roxy's coffin. My criminal record was now permanent. Connor sat in the gallery, head bowed respectfully, playing the victim one final time. Nicole held his hand for support. 2 weeks later, Connor successfully petitioned to become executor of Roxy's estate. My conviction for stalking him actually strengthened his case. Roxy's parents, desperate for closure, signed the papers without question. The trust fund Roxy's grandmother had left her, meant for graduate school and starting her life, now belonged to Connor. I tried one last time to expose him. I created detailed timelines, mapped out inconsistencies, compiled every piece of circumstantial evidence, but who would believe a convicted stalker? My criminal record destroyed any credibility I might have had. Local lawyers wouldn't even return my calls once they learned about my conviction. Connor announced he was starting a scholarship fund in Roxy's name at NYU. The irony made me physically ill. He stood at a podium in the student center, wiping away tears as he talked about honoring his best friend's memory. The administration praised his generosity. Students applauded. Nicole stood beside him, their matching purple bracelets catching the light. The restraining order meant I couldn't attend Roxy's final memorial service. I watched from across the street as hundreds of people gathered to say goodbye. Connor delivered the eulogy, speaking about Roxy's kindness, her dreams of making the world better. He announced that the scholarship would specifically help young women pursue their dreams, just like Roxy would have wanted. The crowd wept. I bit my tongue until it bled. 3 months after my conviction, I was called to a meeting with Roxy's younger sister, Victoria. She was 17, looked just like Roxy, but with harder edges. She'd been investigating on her own, she explained, not trusting the official story. She'd found Roxy's journal hidden in their childhood room, pages filled with growing fear of Connor's possessiveness. We met in secret, planning carefully. Victoria had something I didn't: clean hands and no criminal record. Together, we could build a case. She'd found witnesses who'd seen Connor following Roxy in the weeks before she disappeared. Security footage from nearby businesses that the police had never requested. Small pieces that might form a pattern. But Connor was always watching. He showed up at Victoria's high school, expressing concern about her unhealthy fixation on her sister's disappearance. He suggested grief counseling, offered to pay for it with the scholarship fund. When she refused, he contacted her parents, planting seeds of worry about their surviving daughter's mental state. Victoria's parents forbade her from contacting me. They'd lost one daughter. They couldn't risk losing another to what they saw as dangerous delusions. Connor had won again, turning Roxy's own family into unwitting accomplices. I found work at a diner 40 miles from campus, where nobody knew my name or story. I served coffee and eggs to truckers and travelers, saving every penny for a private investigator. But PIs cost money I didn't have, and my criminal record made it impossible to get better employment. 6 months after Roxy's death, Connor graduated with honors. The ceremony featured a special tribute to Roxy, with Connor accepting an award for community service in her memory. He announced his move to Seattle, Roxy's dream city, where he'd been accepted to graduate school, the same program Roxy had planned to attend. Nicole went with him. Their engagement announcement appeared on Instagram 2 weeks after graduation. She wore a purple stone ring, Roxy's favorite color. The caption read, "We know she's watching over us." The comments overflowed with congratulations and heart emojis. I kept investigating from a distance, spending my nights researching similar disappearances, looking for patterns. 3 years before Roxy, a girl named Min had vanished from Connor's high school. She'd been his lab partner, described as sweet but shy. The case went cold. Her family had moved away, broken by grief. The similarities made my skin crawl, but correlation wasn't causation, and I was a convicted criminal. My probation officer warned me during our monthly meetings. Any contact with Connor, any attempt to investigate him, would violate my plea agreement. I'd go to jail. I nodded and promised to focus on my recovery, then went home and continued my research. A year passed. The diner job barely covered my bills, but I'd saved enough for a consultation with a criminal lawyer. She reviewed everything I'd compiled and shook her head. Without new evidence, concrete physical proof, there was nothing to be done. My conviction tainted everything I touched. She suggested I move on with my life, but I couldn't move on. Roxy haunted my dreams, her laugh echoing in empty moments. I'd catch glimpses of purple hoodies on strangers and feel my heart race. Connor's social media showed a perfect life in Seattle. Graduate school success, a beautiful fiancé, weekend hikes in places Roxy had pinned on her vision board. Then one morning, a detective walked into the diner. Not for me, just for coffee and pancakes. But I overheard her phone conversation about a missing college student, Sammy, who'd vanished after meeting a friend for coffee. The friend was distraught but helpful, already organizing search parties and memorial funds. My blood ran cold. I wanted to scream, to grab the detective and explain about patterns and history, but my manager was watching, and I needed this job. I served the coffee with shaking hands, fighting back words that would only mark me as crazy. The detective left a generous tip. As I cleared her table, I found she'd left behind a folder. Inside were photos from the new case. The missing girl looked nothing like Roxy, but her smile had the same trusting warmth. The friend helping with the investigation was described as a graduate student, engaged, originally from New York. I memorized every detail before leaving the folder at the register, claiming a customer had forgotten it. The detective returned 20 minutes later, thanking me for keeping it safe. She didn't notice my hands trembling or the way I'd memorized the case number. That night, I created an anonymous tip line report about checking similar cases in New York, specifically mentioning Connor's name and Roxy's disappearance. I used a library computer 3 towns over, paid cash for gas, wore a hat that covered my face, but I knew it wouldn't matter. Anonymous tips from convicted stalkers carried no weight. 2 weeks later, local news reported that Sammy had been found. She'd apparently left to start a new life, sending goodbye texts to her family. Case closed. The helpful friend who'd organized the searches gave a tearful interview about the importance of mental health support. I recognized the purple bracelet on his wrist even before they showed his name, Connor Morrison. My probation ended the next month. Legally, I was free, but freedom meant nothing when I knew Connor was out there, selecting new victims, perfecting his methods. I'd served my sentence while he lived Roxy's dreams with her money. I packed my few belongings and drove west. Not to Seattle, the restraining order had no geographic limit, but to Portland, close enough to watch from a distance. I found another diner job, another cheap apartment. I kept my name off social media, paid everything in cash, became a ghost myself. Sometimes I'd drive past the Seattle University where Connor studied, careful to stay off campus. I'd see missing person flyers for young women who'd vanished without explanation. Not all were connected to him, couldn't be, but the pattern was there for anyone willing to look. Sweet girls, trusting souls, the kind who'd believe a friend would never hurt them. I thought about Roxy every day, how she'd trusted Connor completely, right until the end, how she'd probably been confused when her best friend became something else. I wondered if she'd called for help, if she'd thought we'd come looking. We had, just too late and in all the wrong ways. The weight of failure crushed me slowly. I'd had the evidence in my hands, literally held proof of Connor's guilt, and I'd bungled it so completely that I'd become the criminal instead. My obsession with justice had made me the perfect patsy, the unreliable narrator in Connor's carefully crafted story. 5 years after Roxy disappeared, I still work in diners, still live in cheap apartments, still check missing person reports with a sick feeling in my stomach. Connor has his PhD now, teaches undergraduate psychology at a respected university. His social media shows a perfect life, beautiful wife, academic success, volunteer work with at-risk youth. He gives talks about grief and healing, uses his experience with a friend's disappearance to connect with struggling students. Sometimes young women go missing from his university. They're usually found, usually fine, usually embarrassed about worrying everyone, but sometimes they're not found at all. And when that happens, Connor is always there to comfort the community, to organize searches, to speak eloquently about loss and hope. I document everything from a distance, building files that no one will ever see. My criminal record ensures that. I'm the stalker who went crazy when her friend disappeared, the cautionary tale about letting grief become obsession. Connor made sure of that. The cruelest irony is that he was right about one thing. I was jealous of Roxy, not of her popularity or how easily she made friends, but of how purely she saw the world. She believed people were basically good. That friendship meant something sacred. That belief called her, but she held it until the end. I don't have that belief anymore. Connor stole it along with everything else. Now I serve coffee to strangers and watch the news for familiar patterns, knowing that somewhere out there, another trusting girl is meeting her best friend for coffee, laughing at his jokes, not noticing the way his smile doesn't quite reach his eyes. My phone buzzes with a news alert. Another missing student, this one from Connor's university. The article mentions a helpful professor organizing search efforts, someone who understands the pain of losing a friend. I close my eyes and see Roxy's face, forever frozen at 21, forever trusting the wrong person. There's nothing I can do. Connor made sure of that. He won completely, got everything he wanted, Roxy's money, a perfect life, and the ability to continue his pattern without suspicion. He destroyed me so thoroughly that speaking the truth sounds like madness. I pour another cup of coffee and watch the rain fall on Portland streets. Somewhere in Seattle, Connor is probably comforting another victim's friends, building another file of evidence against anyone who suspects him. The cycle continues, and I'm powerless to stop it. That's the real horror. Not just that Connor culled Roxy, but that he turned her death into a weapon against anyone who loved her enough to seek justice. He made me the villain in Roxy's story, the crazy friend who couldn't let go. And maybe that's what I am now. Maybe that's all I'll ever be. But I keep watching. I keep documenting. Not because I believe justice will come, but because someone should remember the real Roxy, not the perfect victim Connor created. Someone should know that she hated pad thai, despite what Connor orders in her memory. That her favorite color was actually green, not purple. That she was planning to break off their friendship before she disappeared, tired of his possessiveness disguised as love. These small truths are all I have left of her. They're not evidence, won't bring justice, won't stop Connor from hurting others, but they're real. And in a story built on lies, sometimes that's all that matters. I finish my shift and walk to my car, checking my mirrors out of habit. Connor's restraining order is still active, will be forever. He made sure of that too. I'm legally barred deterred from ever approaching him, from warning his future victims, from doing anything but watching from a distance as history repeats itself. The rain picks up as I drive home. My windshield wipers hit a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat, like footsteps on metal stairs. I'll never stop hearing those sounds, never stop seeing Roxy's blood-soaked hoodie in that dumpster. Connor took everything else, but he can't take my memories, no matter how much they hurt. Tomorrow I'll serve more coffee, check more news alerts, add more documents to files no one will read. It's not justice, barely even resistance, but it's all I have left. Connor won, completely and permanently. All I can do is bear witness to his victory, one missing girl at a time.